Hello and welcome back to the Yogi Collection. I am Yogi, your curator through the fascinating world of collectibles. I love collecting stuff. Right now I have a huge collection of Lego that dates back to the late 90s. I started with collecting Lego Star Wars exclusively, but now I've moved into motorsports and I find myself collecting speed champions as well as the Technic cars like the Lamborghini Cyan or the Ferrari SP3. So I have a lot of experience acquiring valuable collectibles throughout the years, and I want to share that with you today. I believe that what you'll find that differentiates me from other YouTube influencers is that I'm not trying to sell you something. Instead, what I'm trying to do is educate you in not only why these cars are so collectible, but the history behind these vehicles and the motorsports pedigree that comes with it. In addition to playing with miniature versions of these cars, I actually have an alternate channel called Yogi's Garage, where I've been currently restoring a 2002 Porsche 911, and I'll be moving over to the 2005 Porsche Turbo S in the spring. So be sure to give that channel a sub. I've been promising to curate my collection of these for a long time, and today is the day. So without further ado, welcome to the show. So today I want to share with you the history of Porsche. And what better way to share the history of Porsche than in Diecast Collectibles? And unless you've been living under a rock, Porsche has been the hottest brand in Diecast Collectibles, regardless if it's at 1/64 scale, 1/43 scale, 1/18 scale. Everyone is collecting Porsche. So the question is, why?
Why?
Why do people collect this brand of car specifically? Well, that's what I'm going to share with you today in this brief history of Porsche, why it's so popular, and where it came from. But before we get started, I'd like you guys to consider subscribing to my channel. It absolutely helps me. I'm not monetized yet, but it certainly gets me to that point. I'll jump into the algorithm and more people will be able to see my videos. So it's not asking too much. It's free to you. So be sure to do that. There's more to the name Porsche than just an automobile manufacturing company. Porsche has been around since the early 1900s, and its founder, Ferdinand Porsche, had a deep understanding of engineering and had a passion for manufacturing revolutionary vehicles. But my story isn't about Ferdinand Porsche, but rather his son, Ferry Porsche. You may be asking yourself, why did I take this path? Well, mainly because Ferdinand Porsche broke ground in so many things other than the Porsche brand, but it was Ferry Porsche that put Porsche on the map. In addition, Ferdinand's controversial relationship with Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime is too heavy to discuss on my channel. So let's start with Ferry Porsche. Ferdinand Anton Ernst Porsche, known as Ferry Porsche, was born on September 19, 1909 in Austria. And as the son of the founder of Porsche, Ferdinand Porsche, he grew up in an environment filled with discussions about engineering and design, and it deeply influenced him. Ferry Porsche played a critical role in the design and development of some of the earliest cars produced by his father's company, including the Volkswagen Beetle, one of the most iconic cars ever made. So before I show you an example of this iconic car, I need to set the stage on my table to celebrate this presentation. So I have this diorama here that I picked up a few months ago, and it's of a Porsche dealership. So if you haven't seen these, be sure to check out eBay. They're all over the place, and they're around $30 to $40, and they light up, which is fantastic. So I took the roof off. I'm setting it up here along with the parking lot so that we can drive these cars through like a showroom, and you can get an idea of what it was like to see these cars in person. Okay, now that the stage is set, here we go. The people's car, the Volkswagen Beetle. And my example may look familiar to my subscribers. This is a Majorette Volkswagen Beetle, which I showcased in my Majorette video. Be sure to check that out. The idea of the Volkswagen Beetle, originally known as the Volkswagen Type 1, was conceived in the early 1930s by Ferdinand Porsche under the commission of Adolf Hitler, who wanted a cheap, simple car to be mass-produced for the new road network in Germany. The goal was to create a people's car, Volkswagen in German, that was affordable, practical and reliable. The Beetle was designed with a rear air-cooled engine and a distinctive round shape which contributed to its nickname, the Beetle. Its design emphasized simplicity and efficiency, making it affordable and easy to maintain. Although designed before the start of World War II, the production of the Beetle was limited due to the war, and the factory was repurposed to support the war effort, and it wasn't until after the war that the Beetle began to be produced in significant numbers. Although initially this was the dreams and designs of Ferdinand Porsche, due to his acts in World War II, he spent time in jail, and during this time it was Ferry Porsche that brought his dreams into reality. And in fact, when Ferdinand Porsche was released from jail, he was amazed by the sheer number of Volkswagen vehicles on the German roads. His dream had come true. The Beetle's performance was not what made it iconic. Rather, it was the distinctive design, durability, and the practicality it offered at an affordable price that contributed to its legacy status and worldwide popularity. The early Beetles were equipped with an air-cooled flat-bore boxer engine. Yes, that's right, a boxer engine. The very first models only had a 1.1-liter engine that produced approximately 25 horsepower. Yeah, not a rocket ship. However, with this setup, the Beetle could achieve a top speed of around 100 kilometers per hour, which is about 62 miles per hour, and that was more than sufficient for the roads and driving conditions of the time. Now, you may be asking yourself at this point of the video, why are we talking about Volkswagen? Well, without Volkswagen, there really isn't a Porsche name, right? So Ferry Porsche had to work with the Volkswagen name to generate the revenue, to stand up his company, and when he was able to do so, he released the very first car with the Porsche brand, the Porsche 356. Now I know this model that I'm showing you here is not 1/64 scale, it's 1/43, but it's the only one I could find with this level of detail. The first Porsche 356, known as the 356/1 or 356-1, made its debut in 1948. It was a lightweight, rear-engine, rear-wheel drive car that emphasized performance and handling. Remember when I mentioned Volkswagen earlier? Well, underneath the skin of this vehicle was primarily Volkswagen parts. See how that works? Eventually, the car would be pure Porsche, but for the first prototype of 1948, it was a Volkswagen underneath. Initially available as a coupe, convertible, and later as a roadster, which is this one, the 356 featured a sleek, aerodynamic design that was ahead of its time. This particular model is a 1950 Roadster. I do like that this model allows you to push the seats back so you can get to the back seat. Pretty cool. Speaking of this model, this particular one is made by an Italian company called Brum, and the series is the Oro series, which I believe is their series that specifically focuses on historically significant automobiles. The company itself, Brum, has been around since the 1970s, but from what I can tell, they don't really produce a whole lot of cars anymore, maybe one every year, and they specialize on promotional cars only, which makes them even more collectible, like this particular Brum here. I don't know when it was made, but it's certainly collectible. Like Porsche today, the very first 356 model was put on the racetrack almost immediately after being manufactured. Everything goes through motorsports. I mean, where else are you going to be able to test a car's endurance by pushing the vehicle to its extremes, something that a road car would never be asked to do on a daily basis? If it can race on a track, it can handle daily driving. So it shouldn't come as any surprise that the Porsche 356 quickly established itself in motorsports, securing wins in its class at the prestigious events like the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the Targa Florio. And it's because of this racing success that helped cement Porsche's reputation as a manufacturer of high-performance sports cars. So, speaking of race cars, here's a Porsche 356 Outlaw from Hot Wheels 1/64 scale in this beautiful cobalt blue. I absolutely love this. The design and the styling of this car is top-notch. I just wish it had a little bit more detail on the headlights and the tail lights, but all in all, the color really sells it for me. So because of the huge size disparity between the 143 scale and the 1/64 scale diecast, I'm going to crack open this Hot Wheels Silver Line Porsche 356 Speedster and show it off. This particular one has tons of detail on it, with the Porsche logo on the side as well as on the front, and the headlights and signal lights are painted, and then the red interior. If I had to guess, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's a Guards red or a Boxster red interior. I don't know, it's probably not. And the Speedster's special in another way, because the Speedster was designed for the American market to address the demand for more affordable, sportier, open-top driving experiences. The Speedster featured a simpler, more aerodynamic windshield, reduced interior amenities, and a lightweight, removable top, distinguishing it from other 356 models. And because of that motorsports history, it has been associated with several iconic actors and famous personalities, like James Dean. Although he died in a Porsche 550, he did have a 356 Speedster, and he absolutely helped cement the brand's cool factor in the United States. Another famous person would be Steve McQueen. McQueen's passion for racing and fast cars was well documented, and the 356 Spider was among his favorite for its simplicity and performance. And it wasn't just men. Janis Joplin, Brigitte Bardot, all of these actors appreciated the sleek styling and performance that came with these cars. But underneath all of this styling and sheet metal and engines, at the heart of this car is still a Volkswagen. With the death of his father in 1951, Ferry Porsche took over as the leader of Porsche as well as the patriarch of the family. And Ferry knew he could only take the 356 chassis so far, so he needed to come up with a new design. And believe it or not, it wasn't Ferry Porsche who came up with the design, but his son, Ferdinand Alexander Porsche, often referred to as Bootsy, who was tasked with creating the next generation of Porsche. And like anything Porsche, it must come from a heritage of past success. And he was quoted as saying, "Past knowledge is the soil in which future can grow." And in 1963, Porsche unveiled the 901 at the Frankfurt Auto Show. With its sleeker designs and callbacks to the 356, this car was an instant hit. And beauty wasn't just skin deep. The engine was also improved. It went from a flat 4 to a flat 6, producing an additional 35 horsepower and got a top speed of around 130 miles an hour, greatly surpassing the 356. Now you might be wondering, why is it called the 901? Shouldn't it be called the 911? Well, yeah, but there's some history behind that as well. Another automotive company named Peugeot actually copywrote the 3-digit number series with the middle always being 0. So they sued Porsche and they could not use the 901, so they changed it to the 911. And in 1964, the first 911 hits the dealerships and it blows the drivers away. Although a little tail happy, the precise steering and handling greatly make up for any type of oversteer that may occur. What also attracted buyers is that it was versatile. It had 4 seats. You could fit 2 people in the back seat. 2 small people, but nevertheless, it was the first 2+2 sports car. So all of these factors made the 911 an instant hit. But Porsche wasn't done revolutionizing the automobile. Shortly after the first 911s rolled off the assembly line, they started designing different variants of the 911. However, one in particular, the convertible, could not be sold in the United States due to more stricter rollover protection that was being implemented. So what did Porsche do? They designed a completely new category of automobile called the Targa. The Targa was designed with a solid steel roll bar as well as a removable glass roof and back window. Thus, this gave the driver the feeling of an open cockpit and met the stricter regulations that required rollover protection. Although the United States failed to pass that into law, this style of automobile was never really necessary, but Porsche continued to manufacture the Targa until 1989, thus ending the original Targa design in the 964 911. Wait, 964 911? What's with all of these numbers?
Nerd alert!
Oh, yeah, here we go, nerd alert. Yeah, I have nerd alerts in my videos whenever I deep dive into something more specific. For example, the 911 series designations. So here's a brief overview of the series designation since its inception to present. Of course, the OG, the 911, followed by the 930. This is the first major revision known for the introduction of the turbo. The 930 ran from 1975 to 1989. Next, the 964 ran from 1989 to 1994. Major advancements were things like all-wheel drive and significant technological updates. Following the 964 is the last of the air-cools, the 993, which ran from 1994 to 1998. Although the last of the air-cooled and revered by every collector known to man, almost bankrupted the company. It wasn't until the Porsche Cayenne and the Porsche Boxster shored up Porsche's offerings and saved the company. During this same time period, the 996, which ran from 1999 to 2004, and this is the generation that I work on my other channel, Yogi's Garage. It was the first water-cooled 911 and introduced some controversial styling, including the dreaded fried egg look. Porsche then returned to its traditional styling cues in the 997 generation, which ran from 2005 to 2012. In 2012, Porsche introduced the 991 generation, which continued to improve on the 997 designs. And finally, from 2019 to present, the 992 generation, which of course encompasses all of the learnings from previous generations and produced the most technologically advanced 911 to date. Okay, this concludes the Nerd Alert. Okay, now that you have a basic understanding of Porsche, where they're from, and their model designations, why are these so collectible? Well, whether or not you're collecting the actual Porsche or a 164 diecast model, the reasons are the same. It boils down to motorsport's legacy and the impact that they've had in the sport. And if you think about that, it makes sense, right? These cars all basically look the same. So yes, the styling is timeless and everything is where it's supposed to be and the engineering's awesome. The problem is that they all look the same.
How dare you?
So there has to be something else, and that's what it is. Motorsport's legacy. And if you compare it to another manufacturer like Lamborghini, for example, they tend to focus on high-performance street cars and not so much race cars. But it attracts a different type of customer than a Porsche buyer. And when buying these in a scaled model version, the variants are what sell it. And here are a few early examples I want to share with you today. So let's go back in the Wayback Machine, back to the original 911 body style. And the first variant to be introduced is the 911 SC, or Super Carrera. This 1971 Super Carrera here by Hot Wheels is a prime example of this styling. Introduced in 1967, the 911 SC featured a more powerful engine and better handling characteristics than the base model. I got this awesome green Porsche 911 here from the Vintage Racing Club. It's a new sub-theme within the Hot Wheels lineup for 2024. Next, I have for you a 911 Carrera RS 2.7, introduced in 1972, and it became the most iconic Porsche model ever made. It was lighter, more powerful, and had better handling than its predecessors. The Carrera RS 2.7 is renowned for its distinctive ducktail rear spoiler, which improved high-speed stability by increasing downforce to keep that squiggly rear end from spinning out. The next model designation in the lineup is the 930. It was the first major revision known for introducing the turbo. The original 911 Turbo, introduced in 1975, had a 3-liter turbocharged engine. The original 911 Turbo was one of the fastest production cars of its time, and also had the nickname the Widowmaker, because most of the buyers of this car that could afford it weren't race car drivers, and the infamous turbo lag on these cars would cause snap oversteer, and some owners lost their lives. This casting I have for you today is made by Matchbox and was available in the Mattel Creations Club membership, and it's sold for about $25. And I bought about 5 of these. I love the color combination. This is a 1980 model and gives me some serious Miami Vice vibes. In 1978, the 911 Turbo's engine was enlarged to a 3.3 liter and gained an intercooler to boost power further and improve engine efficiency. One other variant of the 930 generation is the SE slantnose, or Flaukbau. In the mid-1980s, Porsche offered a special slantnose or Flaukbau version of the 930 through its special order program. It featured a sloped front end inspired by the 935 race car, pop-up headlights, and sometimes additional performance enhancements. Unfortunately, I don't have a slant nose variant of the 930 in my collection, but here's an actual 935 that it was inspired by. I'll be covering these race cars in the second part of this Porsche series. The next generation, designated the 964, was produced from 1989 to 1994. This generation marked a huge improvement in the 911 overall, whereas the previous model, the 930, was an iteration of the original 911. The 964 is about 85% new design compared to its predecessors. Oddly enough, it seems like I don't have a whole lot of 964s in my collection. I'll have to correct that, but I do have two. I have this Targa, which I believe is a 964 generation, based on its elongated front bumper and the two nubs on the back bumper. And also the other one that I have is this one, which is a tuned version of the 964 Turbo. I like it, but it's not exactly a representation, but it is cool. Okay, now this next generation, the 993, is my favorite generation of all of the air-cooled models. The 993 was produced from 1994 to 1998, and is revered by many enthusiasts and collectors as one of the best iterations of the 911 series. Unfortunately, the development of the 993 was more expensive due to its significant technological and design advancements, and it coincided with a downturn in the economic market at that time, and it nearly bankrupted Porsche. That is, of course, until the Cayenne and Boxster arrived, which is for another video. And here I have the 993 in the Carrera model in this beautiful yellow color, but you can see that the lines are real smooth on this car. All the bumper requirements have been eliminated or integrated into the body itself. It's just an excellent, excellent design. But of course, they didn't stop with the Carrera and the Carrera 4. They introduced a new Porsche 911 Turbo, and this time it was all-wheel drive, so it significantly improved the traction of this car. In 1995, it was powered by a twin turbocharged 3.6-liter flat-six engine, producing 408 horsepower, and can propel this 993 to 0 to 60 at 4.4 seconds. And in the 90s, that was lightning quick. And as mentioned, the 993 Turbo was the first Porsche Turbo with all-wheel drive and twin turbochargers. Now earlier I mentioned I wasn't going to deep dive into the motorsports part of the Porsche lineup. That's for another video. I did want to bring up this one here. This one was released by Hot Wheels last year for the 55th anniversary of Hot Wheels. And this is the 993 GT2, which is basically the 993 Turbo on steroids. Of course, this was an extreme track-focused version of the Turbo, and it's highly collectible. And if you think the speed is incredible, the prices are even more. The 993 Turbo will set you back about $260,000 in today's market, where if you can find the GT2, you're looking at somewhere over $1.1 million. So whip out your checkbooks. Okay, we're done with the water-cooled generation of cars. Those are long gone, those are history. Now we're going to move into the modern era, starting with the very first water-cooled generation 911, the 996. I'm not going to get into the weeds as to the controversy of this car with its water-cooled engine versus the air-cooled, and the purists not liking the headlights because of the design changes. But what I am going to talk about are the important things, like the engineering and the body styling and what it did to motorsports. Now, I mentioned earlier that the 996 generation is part of the new modern generation of 911s. However, it's more of a hybrid between the air-cooled and the water-cooled because it's more of a bridge between the two technologies. During this time, Porsche was going through some major financial issues, and they enlisted the expertise of Toyota to overhaul their Zuffenhausen manufacturing facility. Toyota introduced mass production techniques allowing Porsche to produce vehicles more efficiently. Unfortunately, we know what the cars look like in the late 90s and early 2000s, the Ford Taurus, for example, and those kinds of design techniques were adapted to the 996 generation car, and that's one of the first controversies is the interior quality is less than stellar. And as an owner of two of these, I have to agree. The other controversy, of course, is the fried egg headlight design. The initial fried egg design had the turning signal amber or orange underneath, so yes, indeed, it did look like a fried egg. which really turned off the Porsche purist even more. But if you dig a little deeper, like I always do when it comes to this type of history, you'll find out that the headlights were inspired by the 1997 variant of the GT1. The GT1 class sports cars were required street legal versions for homologation purposes. In other words, you had to have a street version of the car in order to qualify for GT1. Later versions of the 996, the 996.2, modified the headlights to look more like these here, where it's more of a solid chrome look and they are timeless. In fact, even the purists over time have now grown to appreciate these unique headlights. And to me, it represents the transition between air-cooled and water-cooled. And today, I have a few models I wish to share with you. First is the Carrera, the entry model to the 911 series, and I have here Sally Carrera from the Cars movies. And it looks to me, Sally Carrera is a 996.2. Next is the one that I personally own, is the Cabriolet Carrera. The first generation 996 had a 3.4-liter flat-six engine, delivering about 296 horsepower. Then in 2002, which again is my model, the 996.2, it received a 3.6-liter flat-six and increased it to 320 horsepower. Now these numbers may not seem big by today's standards, but keep in mind these cars don't weigh a whole lot, and most of the weight hangs off the rear of the car. Now I don't have a scaled version to show you this, but I do have my car, the 996 Turbo S. The 996 Turbo utilized a 3.6-liter twin turbocharge, and it boosted it to 414 horsepower. The Turbo S is equipped with an X50 package, giving it a boost of horsepower up to 450. But I think the most impactful model of the 996 generation is the GT3. The GT3 was introduced in 1999 as a track-focused version of the Porsche 911. And this model was the first to bear the GT3 name, marking it as a direct descendant of Porsche's racing heritage, thus making it highly collectible. The GT3 was equipped with a high-revving 3.6-liter variant of the Metzger engine, initially offering 360 horsepower, but later upgraded to 380 horsepower in the GT3 RS, which is what I have here. What made this so significant is the fact that they made a track-focused car that's still street legal. And you'll see a bunch of them on the roads, especially early Saturday mornings for cars and coffee. Alright guys, I think I'm going to end it here. So I hope you enjoyed this brief history lesson on the first generations of 911s. In my next video, I'll be going over the more modern ones from 997s all the way up to 992s. And then finally, we'll be talking about the race cars. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider doing so. Subscribing and liking the video or disliking the video helps me get into the
YouTube algorithm.
And more people are able to see these kinds of videos. We'll see you next time. And with that, the collection is closed.